the vibes never felt right on Saturday. I'm not making any excuses. LSU got throttled. That's the worst loss I've seen in that stadium. I was trying to recount the last time. The Tennessee game when Brian Kelly's first year. It was you just kind of knew immediately you were about to get skull drug. But they were coming off of the 30 scholarships. They were coming off of the turnover. They were coming off of all the stuff. There was going to be a low point of that season, right? And that Tennessee game was it. But the last time that you felt, and I know that game, LSU still had opportunities for as bad as they played. When you look at just the scheme of the game, LSU still was in it at halftime, right? I mean, like the back-breaking point when you just got snapped was the red zone interception. When you come out of half, you move the ball all the way down the field, you're about to score, you still have an opportunity. You score there, like, it doesn't feel like you have a chance, but the score tells you you're still in it. And pick Alabama score, that game is cooked. But I will say this, in the first two Alabama drives, I looked at the guy next to me and I said, they can't stop him. Like, LSU's in big trouble. They're in big trouble. Like, defensively, Milroe's about to go off. Which, by the way, what about the LSU stories Milroe's going to be able to tell for the rest of his life? This guy is an LSU assassin.
Jacob Coker better watch his back.
I mean, Jalen Milroe in a series and a rivalry that has, accounted for so many great moments of, college. Milroe has cooked LSU for the last 2 years. 311 yards rushing for Alabama on Saturday night. The quarterback didn't even throw it 20 times. That was a ass whooping, a skull dragging of LSU at home with all of the elements, with everything on point. The celebrities are in town. Game day was here. The place was hyped. There was 102,000 strong. It was Saturday night in Tiger Stadium, and Kalen DeBoer in his first LSU Bama game came in and absolutely wiped the floor with Kelly and LSU. And Kelly said the right things in the post-game press conference, and he took accountability, and he said it started at his desk, and it does. But the last 6 quarters of LSU football is some of the worst coached part of the program that I've seen in a minute. And I believe in Brian Kelly. I think that Kelly is a guy that has done good things for LSU, but he is at a very much of a pivot point of an early day of his reign at LSU. He's not going anywhere. There's no threat of him to go anywhere. He's not going to lose his job. Any talk of it is a waste of time. But there has to be some type of internal, introspective looking of what's the problem. Like there needs to be some like smoking out of what's the issues, because they got issues. There's something going on where it just doesn't feel right. 6 quarters ago, LSU was a competitive playoff challenging team that looked to be a threat going down the stretch. Since halftime at Kyle Field, I mean, I would start playing the young guys at this point. I would start looking towards the future is the point. I mean, I think they have some internal, I don't want to say excuses, but they have some things that we have to recognize as people who support the program. somebody that covers the program, supports the program, if you're a fan of the program, you have to be out loud and upfront about the personnel has to get better. Like, they've got to get better at certain spots to be competitive in games like what happened on Saturday night. Now, did they get beat as bad as they did strictly because of personnel? No, they did not. They didn't. But some of that Milroe stuff, some of those runs, you're chasing them with guys, you're trying to tackle with guys that quite simply can't keep up. Outside of Braden Swinson and Whit Weeks, there's not a lot of professional football players on LSU's defense. That's just the truth. Now, there's over 300 recruits on the sideline Saturday night. You've got the number one recruiting from a defensive standpoint there in Jakeem Stewart. There are things that look like they can help immediately, but they've got to close in recruiting. And they've got to bring a higher level of football players in on the defensive side of the ball to compete year in, year out in that game. I didn't think that Alabama was that much better from a talent standpoint going into the game than LSU. I left there thinking something completely different. Now, the Nussmeier thing is a problem.
It's a layered conversation.
It is. It is. But 6 quarters ago, I was confident that Nussmeier could overcome the deficiencies, the handicaps that LSU had offensively. Can't run the football with any type of consistency. Struggle to have big plays in the passing game, but still had a guy under center that you trusted was going to be, first and foremost, smart with the ball. Protect the ball. Because that's something that you almost take for granted in guys that do take care of it, because once you get somebody that doesn't, where you turn it over 5 times in the last 6 quarters, you realize you're never going to win if you got a guy that consistently turns it over. And the 2 low points of the game on Saturday night, I thought in a game that was riddled in low points for LSU, was the 2 turnovers. Back-breaking turnovers for LSU. Came from the quarterback in situations and decision spots where you literally want to say out loud, like, what the bleep are you looking at? What are you doing? Specifically on the interception, the strip and the fumble, obviously, that's a terrible play, but still, you got to credit Alabama first. And, you know, if I could rewind and start the show from the top, I would say that to start. Is that, look, first and foremost, credit Alabama. Alabama came in with a plan. They came in with a method, and they shut 100,000 people up, and they took the crowd out of it, and they beat the hell out of LSU. And Kalen DeBoer and his crew deserve a lot of credit. I mean, really, that's the greatest example of, if you have a run game and you have defense, it travels no matter where you go. You can go into one of the most hostile environments, because I will say this, that scene right before kickoff where you've got the lights hitting the field. I have a picture of it that I put on our story, on the Jordy Culotta Show story live, because, I mean, it was just a picture that I thought, I was like, this looks like a poster. I mean, this looks like the most intimidating place to ever play a sporting event, where the lights are hitting the field. You got 100,000 roaring down onto the playing surface. LSU had just run out. They do the fireworks show, and there's smoke hovering above the playing surface, like, I would say like 300 feet in the air. and the lights are hitting it. The place is rocking. I mean, if you're Alabama, I got to imagine there are people on that sideline that are sitting around like thinking, am I built for this? I mean, do I love football this much? Because this is Hell's Kitchen of football. I mean, like, you're in it, buddy. I mean, that was everything I thought LSU could produce from an environment, atmosphere standpoint pregame. That place had people shaking. I mean, like, it was rocking to start the game. I mean, Alabama's first play of the game, they got a false start.
Let's play the game.
And then after that, it was just run game and defense. And that is the formula that works everywhere in football. Saturday night in Tiger Stadium or third and fourth grade football on a Saturday morning at some rec field. That will always play. And that's where LSU is so deficient. Like, that's the part when you look at the game, for as gory as it was for LSU, and they got shredded, they got gutted, they still had their chances. Like, they still had opportunities to win the game, or at least get into the game, and could just never do it because defensively they couldn't get the stop, and they just can't run the football. I don't know why Caden Durham doesn't play more. I don't know. I don't have a good theory on that. You know, I think it was pretty evident on his long run. He's obviously banged up. I mean, I would think that he would score that 10 out of 10 times. I mean, when he was open, when he was like he crossed the 50, I mean, I'm like, he's gone. I mean, yeah, like, we're celebrating. Crank the band up. You know what I mean? And then he's like, you could see he's like losing a little gas, and this guy's gaining on him. I'm like, oh my God, this track guy's about to get caught from the back. That doesn't happen. He's obviously hurt. 20 snaps tells me he better be hurt, because not playing him the majority of the time after what, and he's done, you know, all the body of work that we've seen. I mean, that cat's your best running back. He gives you the best chance to make plays, and, you know, maybe it's about pass protection, maybe about certain things, but I mean, you got to get him the ball. I mean, he's got to be a guy that primarily touches it. And look, I mean, there's a lot of criticism that's going to fall at the feet of Joe Sloan and the offensive staff and Cortez Hankton, and rightfully so. There doesn't seem to be, and this is just me watching the game, I didn't know, but there just doesn't seem to be like a plan, a game plan, right? Like, these are the vulnerable spots. These are the parts where, you know, like, these are our favorite plays. It doesn't look like they have a favorite play that they can just run 8 to 12 times a game. You know, I mean, like, I'll just take it back 1 year. Denbrock. Now, he has Jaden Daniels, Brian Thomas, Malik Neighbors, Mason Taylor on the same offense. So he's running that RPO right around the line of scrimmage. How many times a game did LSU run that? 7, 9, sometimes 12 times a game? Nobody could stop it. Where is that play for LSU that they have, like, when they get in some trouble or they need a little bit of confidence, a little bit of a kickstart? Where do they go? That drive before halftime, where they're throwing the ball east and west from the 40 with a chance to at least give yourself a shot at getting points, and you don't even put yourself in position to score at all? I mean, man, that's a lot of money to leave points on the field and, you know, just kind of shrug your shoulders at it on the way down in a big game. I mean, that's a big spot. And you go to halftime throwing a running back flare route on the 45 and just let time expire. I mean, it was a bad night. It was a bad night that LSU looked unprepared. LSU looked out of whack, out of sorts. And, the way that we built the game up, I thought that LSU would have taken what happened at Kyle Field with Marcel Reed and really gotten home to Baton Rouge. I mean, the look on their face in College Station with like 8 minutes left to go in the game when the cameras kept showing them was a look of a staff and of two, Brian Kelly, Blake Baker, of guys that were saying, like, we need to get back to the office. I mean, just like the look on their face was, we need to get back into the lab. We need to go to work. We got to come up with a plan of how to stop a running quarterback because in, 2 weeks, the best running quarterback in college football is coming to our backyard. We got to be ready. Looked like that was the message that they were just sending from a body language standpoint. And then Brian Kelly, after the game, said they got to go back to some basic fundamentals of how to stop a running quarterback, and that they were just going to pound the books for 2 weeks and come in with a plan of how to do that. Again, like I led the show off with, I mean, there are some deficiencies in personnel of trying to stop this type of unit where LSU's they've got to upgrade. They're not as bad as they showed on Saturday night. I mean, they shouldn't give up 190 yards to the guy and 4 more scores. And, to be that far off after what happened to you at Kyle Field the last time out, I mean, Brian Kelly is staring the low point of his first 3 years as LSU's head football coach in the face. I mean, that was...
Les Miles.
Felt like Les Miles. I mean, I told the guy next to me, I mean, is that Les Kelly or Brian Miles down there? I mean, I'm just ready for a toss dive. And they put Caleb Jackson in and they started tossing it to him.
And with all that said, you were in the football game for so long, which is crazy to say out loud, but I've been forever optimistic about this football team because I feel like they would be in every game that they played because you have the staff. Brian Kelly is Brian Kelly, whatever you want to make of that. But you have been able to, either come back in big-time games where the football team feels ready to play every game that they've been in until, I guess, the second half of what happened at Texas A&M and then the second half of Alabama. Because say what you will, you get a false start to start the game. You get a 3rd and 14 immediately out the gates. The place is going nuclear, and then you have a MA. You have a missed assignment on their best player for 15 yards. Then you get to another 3rd down, and then it's just Jalen Milroe gone.
What were they, 10 of 12 on 3rd down? They are 10 of 12 on the night on 3rd down. And really,
10 of 13.
10 of 13. And you know what? You know why? They never got into a 3rd and...
Except for the first one. It was 3rd and 15.
Yep.
Place was on tilt.
But I think they only got into one more that was 3rd and 9. Everything else felt like 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6. And with Milroe, that is... That's suicide. I mean,
suicide.
You're living by... You're just living too close to the edge there, man. I mean, you keep him in front of the chains like that, he's going to shred you. And they could not get into some 3rd down situations where they could get off the field. And like I said, man, Alabama came in with a really good plan. I mean, if you notice, they started to really, inside blitz LSU on DJ Chester and Paul Mubanga. I mean, the turnover after the 4th down stop where Nussmeier is, flushed out of the pocket because of interior push from Alabama's defensive line, and he tries to spin out of it, which is not his game, right? Like, I mean, when you see him moving like that, that's not going to work well for LSU usually. Spinning out and trying to run and throw, running to his left and moving around like that. I mean, he needs to be stepping up and firing. And like I said, credit Alabama. They had a good plan, a plan that's probably going to be a blueprint for
everyone
moving forward. I would imagine that Florida, Vanderbilt, and Oklahoma are going to try and repeat. Now, they don't have quite the personnel that Alabama does to pull this thing off, and it wasn't necessarily the front four. It was more the linebackers for Alabama on Saturday night that were, just had a night.
In the last 6 quarters of football that you've played, you've had 2 quarterbacks throw it 20 times.
Yeah, I mean, look, Lagway tried to go Saturday. I don't know, what that means. He didn't go, but if he plays,
pull a kid out the stands.
If he plays,
grab somebody from the track team.
If he plays against LSU, that's a different game. Man, this is a different story.
You could run Wildcat against LSU.
If you got a running quarterback.
Alabama had one play, and it was follow the running back with your quarterback. That was high school football. You couldn't stop it.
Yeah, I mean, it was LSU's got a big problem. I mean, they've shown they are wildly vulnerable right now to the running quarterback, and it does not look like they have a lot of answers because they had 2 weeks on trying to come up with something, and I mean, it looked worse than the initial failure of it.
And like you said, give Alabama credit, but give Jalen Milroe credit. When he's like that, he's the best athlete in college football.
Yeah, I will say that. But you also were playing
high school coaches.
You were also playing a Jalen Milroe who was coming in with little to zero confidence. For the second time that Milroe has played LSU, he has come into this game struggling. If you look over the last 3 games of Milroe coming into Saturday night, he was playing some real roller coaster, wild, bad at times football. I mean, he did not look like he did on Saturday. And for the second straight year, LSU's defense has slump busted Jalen Milroe. I mean, last year he thought he was going to win the Heisman after he played LSU. This year, I mean, he gets himself back into the discussion of one of these quarterbacks that you got to pay attention to from at least the next level standpoint because, I mean, look, he's the best running back in college football that happens to play quarterback, in my opinion. I mean, once he gets out into the open, rarely do you see the first guy take him down. He's got more than all 3 of LSU's backs. I mean, really,
100%.
truly. He's more powerful. He's as fast, maybe not as Caden Durham, but I mean, he is.
He's run for 340 yards in 2 games against LSU. And
loudly.
8 touchdowns.